Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. We're starting a little early today because I wanted to get in the full hour and I have to leave at 3:30. So, coming to you a half hour early. Thank you for being here. Also, sorry Eleanor couldn't make it today, but she will be back on soon. Good to see you again. Thank you for you allow me to, it's as we're dealing with this, we're observing a genocide around the world. I mean, we see it around the world. I don't mean it's happening around the world. It's tough. It's tough to absorb. It's tough to take in. It's tough to figure out what your emotions are. And you guys help me by I can download all of my anger onto you. Is that what it might be what this is? I don't know. But anyway, either way, either way, I got a lot of important news for you. I'm also going to rip apart Piers Morgan as he debates low key in a clip from a couple of days ago. Some of you might have seen little pieces of that floating around on the interwebs, but I'm going to get into it a little more than just a few pieces. And, I always love ripping that sad troglodyte limb from limb. That's always a lot of fun. But and I am going to get into P. Diddy today as well, because I realize that that's kind of a mainstream story. I'll get in a little deeper than your mainstream might, but beyond that, I don't want to act like I'm ignoring it. It's so horrific. So everybody, click thumbs up, click share, and let's get into it. Israel is planning a major attack on Iran, according to many reports. This is from Popular Resistance, reposted from antiwar.com, both great sites, both great resources. Israel is planning to launch a significant retaliation. I mean, we could have assumed this, but still, it's important news. A significant retaliation attack against Iran over the Iranian missile barrage that targeted Israel on Tuesday, which was a response to several Israeli escalations in the region. Escalations is, again, a nice way of saying genocide. Excuse me. I feel like I'm feeling a bit of an escalation between us. Oh, you mean the genocide? Oh, yeah, that's what I was referring to. Israel, and then also the terror attack they did across Lebanon, blowing up children as they picked up their parents' beepers. You couldn't make up this stuff in some sort of horrific, just the most evil shit you could ever come up with. You couldn't really invent this stuff, I don't think. Israel could target oil production facilities. I discussed this a little the other day. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. It all blurs together. I don't know where I am, honestly. Is this Pennsylvania? No. Couldn't be. But Israel may target the oil capabilities, the oil facilities of Iran, but that seems like that would be a terrible move because it would impact energy prices around the world. You may have a lot of OPEC nations stopping their production, harming the U.S., harming Europe, etc. But that doesn't mean Israel wouldn't do it. Israel seems to want to create a massive war in the entire region so they can steal as much land as possible, hoping to drag in the United States so that you have the most powerful military in the world facilitating everything Israel does. Now, of course, the U.S. is facilitating the genocide in Gaza, but it'd be different if the U.S. is actually firing missiles into the Middle East in a large way. Israeli officials say that if Iran hits back, then all options are on the table, including strikes on Iran's civilian nuclear facilities. Now, Scott Ritter, who knows a lot about this, the former UN weapons inspector, says that if Iran wanted to, and if they were pushed to it, they could create nuclear weapons in a matter of days, possibly weeks. I don't know anything about the difference between creating a nuclear weapon out of what you have at a nuclear power facility. So I can't speak to that. But if that's true, that Iran could have nuclear devices that quickly, that certainly changes the equation as well. Other options being considered are attacks on Iran's air defenses or targeted assassinations. Of course, Israel has a long history of already targeting and assassinating many Iranian officials, including along with the U.S., General Soleimani, their top general, including the Iranian that was killed in the assassination of the head of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, the other day, including the the assassination of several Iranian generals in the Syrian consulate, including the assassination of many Iranian scientists over the years, just shot in broad daylight by Mossad. And I would argue, including the recent helicopter going down that happened to have inside of it the Iranian president. Now, I don't think we're going to see proof that that was Israel anytime soon, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You know, they had the desire, they had the motivation, they had the know-how. I'm just saying. Israel would likely need U.S. military support to launch significant strikes on Iranian soil. And as I showed you yesterday from the New York Times and many other outlets, there are large media outlets. There are U.S. inside Beltway groups that are pushing for this war with Iran, like Lindsey Graham and John McCain have for years. John McCain's been a little quiet on it in the past couple years. Not sure why. Where has that fella been? Oh, that's right. Hell, I forgot. Sorry. He moved recently, a couple of years back to hell. If I had totally forgotten his change of address. But yes, this seems like it could be a major attack. Obviously, we can all hope that Israel backs off, but that's not what Israel does, is it? So I'm not bringing this up to act like Bernie Sanders is a hero. I know how much he has let all of us down over the past many years, but that aside, for the first time ever, this is from Mondo Weiss, for the first time ever, there will be a vote in Congress on blocking weapons to Israel. This is the first vote. There has not been a vote on even beginning to stop the every 36-hour weapon shipments to Israel. That is how morally corrupt, morally bankrupt our Congress is. How bought off, the level of bought off they are. There has not been a vote, a bill, a nothing to stop the flood of weapons to Israel, to bomb children, to blow up children. Thank you, Peter, for the donation and helping keep this show going. If Israel destroyed the oil and hurt the U.S.'s wallet, the U.S. just might go after them because of that. Oil companies are more important. Well, oil companies, and even more important than oil companies, is the strength of the petrodollar, which is why it's the deep reason the U.S. government has hated Iran for generations, is because Iran has an immense power to harm the petrodollar, to buy and sell, mainly sell oil outside of the U.S. dollar. Back to this story, though. Last week, Bernie Sanders announced that he had introduced legislation to block a $20 billion arms sale to Israel. $20 billion more of arms to Israel. But yeah, we don't have any money to help the people that are underwater in North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina and Louisiana and Florida. There's no money. We don't have any money, but we're going to send $20 billion of arms to Israel. The joint resolutions of disapproval would prevent the delivery of offensive weapons, and they are offensive. I never get tired of that joke. That the State Department approved in August, just days before ceasefire talks were set to resume. The package includes fighter jets and advanced air-to-air missiles that we're sending to genocidal maniacs. This is like handing guns over to Hannibal Lecter, just like every day, and going, we really need this to stop. Here you go. We really need this to just calm down. Everybody needs to, here you go, needs to take a step back. We need peace in the region. Here you go. We need peace in the region. Oh, you need more ammunition. Sorry. Yeah, here you go. We need everyone to just relax and take a step back. We need a ceasefire deal. How about some grenades? Grenades are good they're all purpose. There you go. That's really what it is. That's what's going on right now. Sadly and illegally, much of the carnage in Gaza has been carried out. Oh, this is a quote from Sanders, by the way. That's why he's saying carnage in Gaza rather than saying genocide. It really is these slight linguistic tricks, even by one of the only people in Congress that is putting forward a vote to stop arming Israel. Even by him, can't say genocide. Sadly and illegally, much of the carnage in Gaza has been carried out with U.S. provided military equipment, providing more offensive weapons, and they are offensive. To continue this disastrous war would violate U.S. and international law. The sales would reward Netanyahu's extremist government, even as it continues to cause massive destruction in Gaza. And, Netanyahu's government is exceedingly extreme and extremist and radical and maniacal. However, I think it's important not to fall for that propaganda trick that this is all Netanyahu. This is actually how Israel has behaved in many regards for generations. So let's not pretend this is all just Netanyahu. Massive destruction in Gaza undermined the prospects of a ceasefire deal that would secure the release of the hostages and advance its efforts to illegally annex the West Bank. Congress must act to save lives, uphold U.S. and international law, and stand up for U.S. interests. We must end our complicity in Israel's illegal and indiscriminate military campaign, which has caused mass civilian death and suffering. So that's the new bill from Bernie Sanders and a couple other Democrats signed on to it to actually begin to maybe slightly slow down. And by the way, it won't pass. But it's a nice idea. Slow down the bombs sent to Israel to murder children. I'm a few days late on this, and I have not heard a lot of talk about it, but I believe this is the third self-immolation in the United States in regards to Israel's genocide. And this latest one, this is about the vigil for Matthew Nelson, who self-immolated outside Boston, the Boston Israeli consulate. While sitting below a tree in the area of the Boston Common and Public Garden on September 11th, Matthew Nelson began to record himself speaking to camera, saying he was engaging in an extreme act of protest. He said, "The protest I'm about to engage in is a call to our government to stop supplying Israel with the money and weapons it uses to imprison and murder innocent Palestinians, to pressure Israel to end the genocide in Gaza and support the ICC indictment of Netanyahu and other members of the Israeli government." Nelson, 45, posted it on YouTube, but they, of course, have since deleted it, and he died from his wounds later. So this is yet another, and I feel like it's important to talk about these stories. It's important to talk about these activists who have given everything, given their lives to protest this genocide, while at the same time, I do not support this form of action because I feel that all of you that are activists out there that are standing up against this should be a part of this movement and continue to be a part of this movement. So I think it's an important story to cover. And it's an important thing to talk about, but I also want to make clear that this is not my preferred form of activism. But obviously, Aaron Bushnell had a massive influence. Like, the world talked about it. There's posters of him in Egypt and other places for his actions. But that's the third one. And how much do you get from the mainstream media about this, huh? The third self-immolation. I don't know if we've ever had another protest movement in America that involved three separate self-immolations. I mean, it's just horrific. And I think the reason it's evoking these type of things is because it is so horrific. If you actually watch these videos, if you actually take in what is going down, it is unfucking believable. And it is soul crushing. So, all right, I want to jump to, I want to be careful not to run out of time here. I'm going to jump to this interview between Piers Morgan and Low Key. Now, most of you know both of these people. Piers Morgan somehow has made and it also has to do with Israel, of course, somehow has made a career, especially recently, out of having people on to just school him and make him look like a sad, pathetic genocide denier. And that's how he gets the most views. So, he's a scam artist, so he just wants the most YouTube clicks. He doesn't care. He seems to care during the interview, but apparently he doesn't care enough to not book people who are going to make him look like fools. Now, I, of course, am fine with that, because if you want to keep booking people who actually stand up for Palestinian rights, who stand up against Israel and this genocide, then book away, my good friend. But it is amazing that it seems like once every 2 weeks, you have someone on Piers Morgan just making him look like a effing clown. And yet he keeps having him back. So, all right, fine then. But this is him talking to Low-Key. Low-Key, of course, does amazing work. Low-Key is a rapper, but he's also works for Mint Press. He does interviews. He does articles. He does protests. And he was my colleague for a year that I worked at Mint Press. Just a year ago, for a year, I worked at Mint Press, did videos there, and I spoke to Low-Key almost every week. So here he is on Piers Morgan, and I'm gonna point out some of the propaganda that Piers Morgan's using, et cetera, et cetera. But some people I've noticed in the comments get annoyed when I am interrupting the interview that I'm playing because I'm picking it apart. But that's kind of the point. So if you want to go watch the full hour interview or whatever, then go watch the full hour interview. The point is that the point of my show is not just to play someone else's show. So sorry if you don't like, you're like, who is this guy interrupting Piers Morgan? So why is the Piers Morgan show have so many interruptions? Okay, let's get into it. Please, everyone, by the way, click thumbs up and click share, do all those good things. I'm trying to rush through a lot of topics, so I'm not spending a lot of time on that, but that would be awesome. I'll talk more about my new podcast, Just Comedy, a little later, but here we go.
You feel sorry for the Hamas?
No, I'm stating objective facts as a journalist.
I spent a lot of time setting up these clips, and yet I always forget that I've got it on like 1.8 speed or 2.0 speed or whatever.
Stating objective facts as a journalist that has researched this topic.
But what about the 1,200 people who they murdered and the 7,000 they wounded?
No. Hundreds of those people were killed when Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive.
That's simply not true.
It simply is true.
It isn't.
And I encourage.
So I brought this up last time. I played a clip of Piers Morgan several weeks ago where I think it might have been Low-Key. I think it was George Galloway brought up the Hannibal Directive, and it might have been Low-Key actually. And Piers Morgan goes, the what? And he'd never heard of it. This is like a month ago. So 11 months of everybody talking about the Hannibal Directive, and he never heard of it. Now he's heard of it because he's a little bit more ready for this interview with Low-Key. Yet he refuses to acknowledge that it did anything. When, in fact, as I've carefully covered for you, like a large percentage, and John in the chat is putting in the number that they've now brought it down to, 1,139 is the number that the official number of those killed on October 7th. But many of those could be as much as half, could be as much as 2/3, but a lot of them were killed by the IDF. And right here, Piers Morgan is trying to deny that.
You, in the spirit of journalistic inquiry and curiosity, to really look that up.
It's already been thoroughly investigated.
It absolutely has not.
But it has, Low-Key.
It's been investigated by Al Jazeera. It's been investigated by trustable news sources that have found this to be the case.
No, it's not true that hundreds of people in those named casualty numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
No,
it's a fact.
It is absolutely, and Low-Key is of course right. It is absolutely a fact that hundreds of people were killed by the Hannibal Directive, which says that if Israelis are taking hostages, kill everyone. Kill the hostages, kill the hostage takers, kill everyone around. And we know that especially at the Nova Music Festival, which was moved to that location 2 days before October 7th for some odd reason, we know that Apache helicopters just mowed people down. Now, it doesn't mean Hamas didn't kill any of these people, but it does mean a lot of them were killed by the IDF.
It's a documented fact. And you know what else? If you were to study those cars, which were put forth as evidence that Hamas had killed those people fleeing the Nova Festival, the order came directly from the Israeli Air Force. This is a mass Hannibal. This is a dead zone. No cars will pass.
Did you watch the documentary? Did you watch the documentary?
And I wish, and now Piers is just pivoting. I wish Low-Key, I mean, he's also getting talked over, but I wish Low-Key had also had the time to say that those cars, because the Israeli government does not want you to see them, those cars have been shredded and buried in an undisclosed location. Does that sound like people who are innocent and want you to see that it was all done by Hamas? Not so much.
Last week on BBC Two.
No.
About the music festival, right? You literally see Hamas fighters with their GoPros going from car to car, murdering people.
That happened. Yeah, that happened.
Why are you trying to diminish the scale of what was going on?
So this is a lot of their debate. Is Loki will bring up a great point. Piers Morgan will just pivot to what about Hamas? But of course, the reason it's more important to talk about what Israel did than what Hamas did in today's time right now is because it's not covered at all. So, Piers says, why aren't you talking about Hamas killing people? And the truth is that aspect is covered endlessly. How many times have you turned on a mainstream media and heard about Hamas killing people on October 7th? It's the other side of things that is completely covered up, except by, like Loki said, an Al Jazeera report, a few reports here and there. But one of these sides is well known that Hamas killed people on October 7th. One of these sides is completely covered up, despite the fact that we now have the evidence that it's true. So that's the difference. It's the job of a journalist to out the stuff people don't already know.
I've just said that happened. That doesn't equate to diminishing what you've just
stated. It doesn't
say
hundreds
you're
of
diminishing. You're diminishing Apache helicopters bombing cars that contained civilians. You're diminishing all of the Israeli captives that have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Israeli captives have come out of Gaza and said very clearly that actually they were scared of being killed by Israeli airstrikes.
Why are there hostages at all?
See, again, doesn't address anything that Loki just said and switches to what about Hamas? But what about Hamas? Hey, Vinny the Panda just donated on Rumble. Thank you, Vinny. Said Israel bombing the main road out of Beirut is genocide 101. Vinny the Panda, thank you for donating and supporting the show over on rumble.com/Lee Camp. Okay, I want to jump to another clip here. Let's see. But a lot of this 40 minutes or so is this back and forth where Loki will lecture him on the reality, which absolutely is the reality of this genocide. And Piers Morgan will just sit there silently like a dog who's being, shown a magic trick. It's just like, he'll just sit there. And then when Loki pauses for a second, he'll go, but what about Hamas did this? What about Hamas did that? And he'll act like nothing was said during the 5 minutes that Loki just lectured him on the things he never talks about. Anyway.
And F-35. You're talking about asymmetrical warfare. But the thing that Israel doesn't remember, and which Israel has to know and must know, that winning a war is not about killing on an industrial scale the weakest among the population you are targeting, which Israel excels at, which is the essence of Zionism. Winning a war is about the largest amount of people being convinced of your viewpoint. If we use that metric to understand this war, Israel has lost in Gaza and it will lose in Lebanon because Israel has more enemies around the world than ever before. More people are critical of Zionism than ever before. More people understand it to be essentially an anti-life ideology, which is causing mass human suffering.
I love that point. That's a beautiful point. And Piers Morgan actually let him speak for a second. That define winning a war. Winning a war can be the number of people you kill. It can be the amount of ground you take, depending on the type of war. It can be various aspects. If there's a king, it could be as the king dragged in the street and guillotined. Like, there are various ways to consider winning a war. But one of them, which Loki's speaking to, is the belief around the world of who is right in this back and forth, in this battle, if you could call a genocide a battle, who is in the right. And the world is definitely not with Israel. I mean, the UN just voted that Israel needs to get out of all the occupied territories, which would also mean leaving Gaza. That was the UN General Assembly. All but 14 nations voted that needed to happen out of like 192 or whatever in the UN. 80% of the world's population, billions and billions of people, are in countries that are not in any way supporting Israel or making statements of support to Israel, etc., during this genocide. And even in the other 20% of the world's population, like me in the United States, many of us are not supporting Israel. So Israel is losing this war in that regard. And that regard may be one of the biggest battles, is the battle of public opinion globally. And you may not see, for example, if Israel, quote unquote, wins this war, it decimates Gaza. And then let's say Israel stops bombing tomorrow. I mean, God, I hope so. But let's say Israel stops bombing tomorrow and says, okay, we're done. We won. It would not be winning. It would, it'd be, you will have beaten the people of Gaza into submission. You will have killed 200,000 of them. But the world is against the Zionist apartheid system. And Israel is largely responsible for this because it was Israel's choice to commit genocide. It was Israel's choice to God, I'm sorry, I remember my words so much, but to do something that is live streamed to us all day, and it is utterly horrific. And no one who's remotely moral can support it unless they, and I realize this is, coming from the Jewish community, I realize there are many who do this, but unless they close their eyes and go na in their ear holes, you cannot support this. Now, there are people doing that. I certainly understand that. But I love this point by Loki that winning a war can be different things. And, in terms of winning a war being different things, if you look at Vietnam, the United States killed more people, right? Killed lots of people. We also took more land and then gave it back or lost it or whatever. And, I didn't learn this till 10 years ago or something, that many of the so-called missions in Vietnam by the U.S. troops was, we're going to fight the Vietnamese in Viet Cong, and we're going to go up this hill, and we're going to get to that top of the hill, and we're going to claim that hill. And they would fight to the death, and it would just be bodies everywhere, both sides. And then the U.S. would win, and they'd kill lots of Vietnamese, and they'd get to the top of the hill, and they'd turn around, and they go, okay, we did it. And they'd leave the hill. Because claiming the hill didn't actually matter. It was just about how many can you kill. But as you saw, so they consider that winning, right? We took the hill, we killed all those people. But did the U.S. win Vietnam? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So winning a war can be a lot of things. And, this is, you call it a war in order to like be able to have a regular sentence structure. But of course it's genocide, it's terror attacks by Israel and Lebanon, etc. Okay, I want to keep going for a minute.
But Loki, at the same time, Hamas, Hezbollah are wedded, and make no secret of being wedded, to the destruction of Israel. The destruction. That is a nihilistic form of genocide. The very genocide that its supporters, like you, would say is being waged against their people. They are explicit. We want the destruction of Israel.
Okay. Loki doesn't realize that in his phrasing of this, it's a trick. They are explicit. Hamas is, Hezbollah is, the Houthis in Yemen are, that they want the destruction of Israel. But most of them, I'm not saying none of them, but for those who do say this, it's ignorant. But what they don't generally say is, we want the destruction of all Jews. They want the destruction of Israel, the nation state. Now, when he says, when Piers says they want the destruction of Israel, he says that is by definition genocide. No, it's actually not. Ending a nation state, ending an apartheid state is not genocide. Genocide is the destruction of a people. It is killing a people. If Israel, the nation state, the apartheid nation state, were to disband tomorrow, now I'm not talking murder, I'm talking disbanding the nation state that was created by the UN with the vote of 33 nations. If it were to disband tomorrow, that's not genocide. But he is conflating, as Israel has tried to do for over decades with propaganda. He is conflating the state of Israel with the people who live in Israel, and or the Jews that live in Israel. And sometimes Israel wants you to conflate the state of Israel with all Jews around the world, which we are not one thing. Many of us are anti-Zionist. Anyway, and Loki doesn't realize, I mean, when you're trying to parse everything that's being said in one of these debates, it's not easy, but he didn't realize this linguistic trick that Pierce says, oh, well, that's genocide. They say they want the end of Israel. That's genocide. No, they didn't say we want to kill everyone in Israel. They said we want the end of the apartheid nation state of Israel. And that's what they say.
Well, and they have tried to enact this on October the 7th, and Hezbollah's response the next day, within hours, was to unleash rockets on Israel as well, and to carry on doing it for a year. At some point, Israel obviously was going to respond with massive force to the biggest attack on its people.
I always love this debate, and Piers Morgan has used this before. Other people have used, I mean, this argument, this angle of argument is, what did they expect? So, so apparently, if you expect a genocide, then genocide's fine. If we do this, they're going to commit genocide. Well, then the genocide's fine. What did they expect is not a debate to allow genocide. It doesn't matter what they expected. It doesn't matter who expected what. I mean, I don't think they expected 200,000 murdered by Israel. So what did they expect? But even if they did, even if they said, oh, they're totally going to genocide us, still doesn't change the fact it's a fucking genocide. So this angle of argument, what did they expect, is just the saddest, most pathetic, like, admission of losing a debate.
Obviously, they were going to do that. Hamas knew they would do that. Iran, who were funding it, knew they were going to do that. Hezbollah knew they would do that. Hezbollah knew if they kept rattling the Israel cage with their rockets, that they would get a response of the kind we're seeing.
And this angle of argument is also dumb because, well, what did Israel expect? You've put millions of people in open-air prisons. You harass them endlessly. You murder some endlessly. You murder journalists endlessly. You cut off medication. You make it so that the average illnesses that most of us can survive are death sentence in places like Gaza. You decrease the amount of food. You kill people's children. You kill people's parents. You kill people's families. What did they expect? The what did they expect argument is just, to me, it's just a dumb argument because you can take it from either angle. What did Israel expect? They didn't expect any pushback ever to the Nakba, to putting people in this prison and not letting them out. It's just, what did they expect?
Now, what they underestimated is that Israel would be quite as successful as they're being right now.
Successful. He's using the term successful for a genocide. He's using the term successful for a mass terror attack across Lebanon. Oh, wow. They've been so successful at genocide. They're honestly, like, I'd have to put them like top 3 genociders. I would. I'd say maybe even top 2. I mean, America did a pretty good job against the Native Americans. The white people did. And, you know, I'd say the Nazis did a pretty, I mean, their job was, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough fight for 2 and 3 there. It really is. What are you talking about successful? He's so repulsive. And the other thing is he likes to do this mealy-mouth thing where 1 minute he's talking about how successful Israel's been, and the next minute he goes, I condemn, or no, he says, I have misgivings about Israel's behavior. Misgivings for a genocide. Oh, I have misgivings about how Adolf Hitler behaved.
With Hezbollah and taking out all its command leadership. And you can feel that the momentum has switched now, where Israeli people, in particular, and all the polling, are now beginning to go back to supporting Netanyahu because they believe.
They're supporting Netanyahu a little more now because they want genocide. Israelis in polling want to, quote unquote, finish the job in Gaza. What is finish the job? Ethnic cleansing. So the protests you've seen against Netanyahu are not that he like killed too many people or that he's bombing children, or the protests against Netanyahu or that he doesn't seem interested in getting the hostages out. But they don't actually care about how many, which is so sad. It's so sick. But
rightly or wrongly, but they believe Hamas and Hezbollah when they say we want to destroy Israel. They believe it, and they believe that they.
Okay, he's babbling on for a while. I want to jump to another clip. Again, I don't want to run out of time. 1 second. Please click thumbs up, click share, click all the things that you need to click, leave a comment, all those good things. Love you all, you rock.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the provisions of the Genocide Convention?
I do not believe what Israel's doing is waging genocide.
That's not why
I'm asking you.
Why? It's not what I'm asking you. It's not what I'm asking you. Why am I?
Although I kind of want to hear that answer. Why is it not genocide? If you look at the definition of genocide, it is every characteristic of the definition of genocide that Israel's committing.
Asking you is Article 1 of the Convention on the Prevention and the Punishment of Genocide says that all parties that are part of this are under obligation to prevent the occurrence of genocide and punish those responsible for its commission. There is a sound argument. There is a sound argument.
How many people live in Gaza?
2 million people live in Gaza.
How many have been killed?
Well, I mean, the Lancet Medical Journal has put forth the assertion that 200,000 people's lives have been ended by Israel's operation.
Well, it's completely untrue.
So now he doesn't believe the Lancet Medical Journal. It's not completely untrue, but it is 200,000, probably quite many more. Many have put out a justifiable belief that it's way over 200,000, but Piers Morgan is not counting those who died from famine and died from disease, which was part of Israel's plans. That's why they blew up all the hospitals, was because they want disease and famine to kill far more than they're killing with bombs. That's their aim.
But that's the Lancet Medical Journal. So the Lancet Medical Journal is a more trustworthy source than you. The Palestinians are saying 42.
I like that line. The Lancet Medical Journal is a lot more trustworthy than you goddamn goon.
As of today.
The Palestinian Hamas run.
No, but that's not how genocide works. But that's not how genocide works, Piers. No, but you know that's not how genocide works.
No, I'm about to tell you.
But you know that's not how genocide works.
So you don't believe the Palestinian Health Authority numbers?
No, I believe them. But what I'm saying,
you think 5 times as many people have been killed?
I've literally just quoted to you what the Lancet Medical Association has said, and I've also quoted to you what they have said.
You know why it matters,
but that's also not how genocide works.
I share a lot of your misgivings about the scale and proportionate response.
Misgivings. Could you imagine anyone during the Holocaust how would you look at them if you went, I share your misgivings about the gas chambers. I have some misgivings myself. I mean, that is repulsive, calling it misgivings.
Of what's been going on in Gaza. And I've said that repeatedly. But I don't think it constitutes a genocide because Israel has the power, should it want to kill all 2 million.
But this is let me finish.
You get they're talking over each other, but you get the point. And it is one of, again, the dumbest arguments I've heard on this is people go, Israel has the power to murder everyone if they wanted to. It doesn't matter. And here's what Loki keeps saying. That's not how genocide works. If you look at the definition of genocide, it is not, did you kill them all? That is not it. Okay? It's, is there an effort to kill a large segment of a people simply for who they are? And that is exactly what this is. And you will see this with every genocide that's been committed over the years. You see it with the Native Americans. In a second, Loki brings up the Aborigines in Australia. You've seen it with the Holocaust. It does not mean many Jews survived the Holocaust. Many Jews in Germany survived the Holocaust. It doesn't mean it wasn't a genocide. It is such a dumb argument that it's not a genocide if they haven't killed everyone. What? And it's not just that it's wrong, it's that it is to fall back on that as your defense means you have lost every other argument there is. If you find yourself pushed so far back trying to defend Israel that you say is not a genocide if you haven't killed every last one, then you have lost every ounce of this argument to get to that place.
Constitutes
Let me
genocide,
finish.
though.
They have the power to eradicate every single Palestinian.
Was genocide committed on the Aboriginal people of Australia?
Well, I'm not going to go over the whole.
They still exist. So therefore, your argument is that they were not subject to genocide following the arrival of Captain Cook.
Right. Exactly. Of course, Pearson ignores that. The argument that, if any people still exist and it wasn't a genocide, then you do not understand the definition of genocide. And that would be insane because in every genocide that's ever been committed across this world, generally someone still exists. You utter idiot. So remarkably repulsive. Okay, I got to get to this last clip or else we'll never get to P. Diddy. But let's see here. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Then he brings on, I'm not going to play this. Then he brings on this idiot woman. This is what he has to do. When he has someone who's going to just rail him and tear him apart, he brings on some propagandist for Israel who then just spouts the like insane talking, but where you're just like, what are you doing? And they just do that for like, and if you interrupt them, you're not allowed to interrupt them because they're supposed to get their time. So it's like, let's bring this utterly insane woman on and watch her talk about shit for a while. But so I'm just going to skip her and go back to this part.
About that.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
'Cause I have
sure.
a question. I have a
What's your
question.
question?
Rupert Murdoch,
Yeah.
News Corp International,
Yeah.
which employed you for several years.
Yes.
Which actually
It employs me
is
now.
still, it employs you now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting to the issue.
Yes. What
News
do you think
Corp-
the issue is?
News-
I
I'll
saw what you
explain to
tweeted. What does it have to do with me?
Not my tweets. I have a question for you.
Hmm.
News Corp International had a charitable arm which funded the Jerusalem Foundation, which builds illegal
What's this got to
settlements.
do with me?
Illegal settlements in
What's it got to do with
Jerusalem.
me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert
do you,
Murdoch.
do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking
This
about
here,
Rupert Murdoch.
this has never been shown on British media. This is a letter from Netanyahu's political office. And Bridget may well recognize the handwriting of Benjamin Netanyahu
Okay.
here. It is a list of individuals that Netanyahu considered to be funders of his political campaign. There is a name on this list. The name is Rupert Murdoch.
Look at Piers Morgan just having to sit and take this.
Your employer.
You know what, Loki?
It seems he funded Benjamin Netanyahu.
You know
That's
what?
an issue.
You know what, Loki? It's not an issue for me.
It's an issue.
Nobody
And actually, it's
tells us-
in the
no.
interest of objectivity
Understand one thing.
that you stated.
Rupert Murdoch can speak for himself. You've got a problem with him, take it up with him.
I do.
I
yeah.
can tell you categorically, he has never had a single conversation with me about anything I've put on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Sam Kiley
Ever.
resigned
Ever.
from the Times newspaper
Ever.
because of Murdoch's investments and bias
If you have
towards
a
Israel.
problem-
So great point by Loki, and it just continues to go back and forth like that. But that Piers Morgan's boss technically is Rupert Murdoch for years and years, and continues to be Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch both funds illegal settlements in Israel. He is a strong Zionist, and also he, as he's saying, is on a list of Netanyahu's top funders, or at one time was, and Piers Morgan goes on to say, I don't, he never called me up and told me not to say anything. Well, that could be true. I don't know that's true. Piers Morgan strikes me as someone who would lie, but he knows what Rupert Murdoch is, and he knows what would get him fired. And I'm sure that it's probably a red line for him to come out full-throatedly, not his limp-wristed misgivings about not that, but actually say this is genocide. It needs to stop. They're murdering children on a daily basis. If he were to do that, probably be the end of his job, maybe the end of his career. So you don't need to get a phone call from Murdoch to know that. And so Loki's got a great point here about who Piers Morgan's boss is and who he's funded by. And Piers Morgan has no answer for it. That's why I'm not going to continue playing it. It's just him trying desperately to change the subject while Loki tries not to allow him to change the subject. Okay. Well, good job, Loki. Still wanted to point out some important points there. Okay. Real quick, because again, I don't want to run out of time, and I do have to stop at 3:30 Eastern. But here's my new podcast. It's called Just Comedy. You can now find it on Spotify. I believe you can find it on Apple Podcasts and all the others as well. It is a little bit hard to find. And when I was looking on Spotify, if you type in Lee Camp Just Comedy, you then have to click the shows tab as opposed to just the search tab. They give you different things you can search. If you search in shows as opposed to episodes, because I have loads of different shit. So you should find it under shows tab. Another way to get it is to go to my Linktree, linktree.com/Lee Camp. And that will you can find it on there as well and listen to it online. And anyway, it's just my comedy segment. So it is a way for me to get my comedy to you. And it would be amazing if you go on if you use Spotify or whatever, if you look it up and you click, there's ways to subscribe or for free, just so you get alerted if a new episode comes out. If you click the bell icon, you could get alerted that a new episode comes out. And those type of things will help me in terms of the algorithm. If I had a bunch of people subscribe, if a bunch of people say, they want to hear about this, that will then get Spotify to let more people know about it, etc. So if you could do that, even if you don't often use your Spotify, if you could just do that, that'd be great. It'd be a way to support the show for free. And this podcast, Just Comedy, is free. So hope you will give it a chance and let me know what you think. Linktree.com/LeeCamp is, if you want to listen to it on your computer or whatever, you can find it there. All right. Let's keep moving. Real quick, before I get to P. Diddy, I was going to cover this yesterday, and then I'm glad I didn't because there is a major update. The major strike that was going to be at all of the ports around the United States, port workers, the port union has agreed to suspend the strike because they had a big win. At least they're calling it a big win. The International Longshoremen's Association agreed on Thursday to suspend a strike that closed down major ports on the eastern Gulf Coast. The move followed an improved wage offer from the employers. The union has 45,000 members, and this strike was going to be a major impact to the U.S. economy, especially right before the election, would have been a major story. And they have suspended the strike because they were given a 62% pay increase over 6 years. But there are other issues to work out, which they are going back to the negotiating table for. But anyway, long story short, when workers stick together, what happens? Oh, they win. A lot of the time they win. Sure, there are smaller instances where they lose, and that's usually because it's a smaller union. But when you're talking these massive unions, 45,000 workers, also ones that can gunk up the economics, gunk up the system as usual, they often will win, and they'll often force the employers to give them concessions. So good for the workers that showed them who was boss at the ports around the United States and won concessions. There was also a big win for an Amazon Teamsters, that
we make this company's profits.
Over 100 Amazon DCK6 workers have now joined the Teamsters to demand a union contract that secures better pay, safety standards, benefits, and working conditions. Good for you, Amazon Teamsters. Keep up the fight. Don't give up, and show Amazon who's boss, because Amazon, no one exploits workers better than Amazon. I mean, they have excelled so well at exploiting workers. I'm really impressed with Amazon's stellar ability to exploit workers. So good for you. Keep it up. Okay. Like I said, when it comes to the, I still want to call him Puff Daddy, but when it comes to the P. Diddy story, he changed his name to P. Diddy years ago. When it comes to the P. Diddy story, I didn't want to act like I realize it's a mainstream media. I mean, you go watch it on CNN, on some of it unfold, but I didn't want to act like I was avoiding this. This is horrific and crazy, and also speaks to how the richest amongst this society in the United States commit heinous crimes. Not all of them, but many of them. And get away with it for years. The number of years this maniac must have been doing this. It's just unbelievable, since the early 90s. So for those of you who don't know, rapper and producer P. Diddy, he's known for some songs, but he's mainly known for being a producer. He faces 120 allegations. Well, 120 people, more than 120 allegations. Allegations from 120 people, and of sexual abuse, exploitation, including against minors. Not those who dig in the mines, but actual young people. I mean, he may have also assaulted minors, but I think he mainly assaulted underage people. More than 100 people, including some who were minors at the time, are planning to file a lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs alleging that the founder of Bad Boy Entertainment and others sexually abused and exploited them. A wave of legal filings against the disgraced 54-year-old. I can't believe he's only 54. I swear to God, I've been hearing about this guy since I was 6. Anyway, since federal prosecutors in New York unsealed an indictment in September that charged Combs with sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. And more names are going to come out about this, but we might see something very similar to Epstein. I don't, some people are saying Diddy's going to be killed the way Epstein was, but I think that it's a little unlikely, but who knows? But we may see this aspect of the Epstein thing, which is there is absolutely no way there aren't a lot of powerful people involved in this, that they weren't at some time over at P. Diddy's parties, because he was known for bringing a lot of people over to his parties and involved in this. And we may see a lot of names coming out, or we may see what they did with Epstein, which was cover up all those names. Most of the names that were connected to Epstein have never been revealed. People talk about the black book, and we know certain people had meetings with Epstein. Now, some of those could absolutely be more than meetings. You're looking at people like Bill Gates, who had many meetings with him, or Bill Clinton, who rode on his jet 26 times. But some of them are legit. You can't know that everybody in the black book is necessarily connected to the sexual assaults, but clearly many were. And with Epstein, it's like everything they collected from his Manhattan house, from his Florida properties, everything from his island, never seen any of it. It's all, I've said this before. My theory on what happened is the FBI came to his Manhattan mansion or whatever. They collected all the cameras, all the videos, all the files, everything in there. They filled it into a truck and they drove it into the Hudson. I mean, like, where did it all go? But we may see something quite similar with P. Diddy, where all of these associates, now some of them, the prosecutors promising are going to be announced, the others who worked with him. But some of them, the bigger, more powerful ones, you may never hear their names. The prosecutors said other alleged perpetrators who will eventually be named in this suit will shock you. They already know who they are, and I'm talking here about not just the cowardly but complicit bystanders that we know watched this behavior occur and did nothing. I'm talking about the people that participated and encouraged it. Many of the instances of sexual abuse, which spanned from 1991 to this year, occurred during, quote, white parties, unquote. I'm assuming that does not mean only white people. Not sure what it means. New Year's Eve and 4th of July celebrations, auditions, and other parties Combs hosted, according to Busby. In some cases, he said the victims were given a drink that they suspected was laced. The youngest of the victims was a 9-year-old boy. Just remarkably horrific. Prosecutors have alleged Combs led a complicated scheme that would have required multiple people to not only know about the behavior, but also be involved to recruit victims, prepare hotel rooms with baby oil, drugs, and extra linens. Yeah, because he couldn't carry his own baby oil on him. But they called them freak-offs. So they had to prepare the hotel room for freak-offs, which was like days of, I guess, sexual assaults in a single hotel room. Someone would have to clean up afterwards. It's unclear whether more indictments are coming, but prosecutors said the investigation is continuing. And this article also details some of the rape that went on. But just, you can't overstate how many people must have been involved in this. And as many are also pointing out, this likely was also a blackmail operation. Whether it was a blackmail operation connected to any governments, I don't know that. But blackmail operation in which much of this was filmed. I mean, some of the victims talk about how they were being filmed. So there's got to be a lot of stuff that a lot of people want hidden right now. And this is... But another reason I want to cover this is when you take this out of just the context of one person, P. Diddy, and you look at it in the context of P. Diddy, Bill Cosby, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, like, you start to see that there is a theme here. And there are many people at these top levels that are involved in remarkably horrific shit. And the fact that they're able to get away with it for this many years is just so unbelievable. And it generally involves authorities. It also often involves cops and prosecutors and things like that knew something was going on but let it go on. In the case of Epstein, you have prosecutors agreeing to give him the craziest sweetheart deal when he was first prosecuted in 2008, I think it was, where he was allowed to basically show up to jail when he wanted to, spend a few hours in jail and then go back to his office. Like, who has ever received a deal like that? But because he was connected to the U.S. government at the top levels, they gave him that deal. And so, again, I realize that this is a largely a mainstream story, but sometimes I feel it's important to not act like I'm avoiding this or anything. I tend to avoid stories that are mainstream coverage because I feel like you've already gotten it. But in this case, it's just too horrific. And I think a lot of discussion should be about who else was involved and how deep did this go and whether there are other people not connected to P. Diddy, but completely separate. Like, we shouldn't just have one of these pop up every 4 years and go, wow, that's crazy. And then 4 years later go, wow, that's crazy. And then 4 years later go, wow, that's crazy. I think we should... I think the people who have the ability, whether it's investigative journalists or prosecutors or whoever it is, should dig deeper on the richest of the rich, the most powerful of the most powerful, because there are stories going around. People like, you could have known to look into P. Diddy years ago, because the people have been sharing these clips of other celebrities going, oh, P. Diddy's parties, oh, those are crazy. And like, there were clearly at minimum rumors, possibly direct knowledge of this shit going on. And people could have known, the people with the ability, with the actual resources, could have been looking into this years ago and never did. And the same is true for all these others that I'm sure if you talk to the top celebrities, to the richest of the rich, you would find out who are the others that have this kind of shit going on, that have their own islands where they fly people out to, that have their own freak off parties where you have to sign an NDA just to walk in the place. I don't think it'd be that tough to figure out who those people are if you had the resources and the connections. Either you're in those circles, or you're a investigative journalist, or you're a prosecutor with the ability and the resources. And so I'm sick of this shit where it's like every 3-4 years, oh, this new guy did this horrible thing. Yeah. You don't think when the Epstein stuff was first coming out, there was no one going, oh, it's kind of like P. Diddy. It's kind of like what P. Diddy does. I guarantee there were people in these circles saying that. And it's like, just fucking do your jobs quicker, okay? But that's because we have a completely corrupt system. So, and money rules a lot of things. So a lot of people that would start to look into things, one, you can pay them off. Two, you could have them disappeared. I'm not saying he did that, but I'm not saying that never goes on, as it did with Epstein. But okay, I got to wrap up. But if you feel like you got 38 cents out of this episode, it would be amazing if you could become a member at leecamp.net. Scroll down to become a subscriber and click that one to throw in a whopping 38 cents an episode. Also, would be amazing if you can check out Just Comedy. Like I said, you can get it at linktree.com/leecamp. But like I also said, it would be really cool if you could go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, and just, click subscribe, click alerts, click the bell icon, whatever it is, so that when new episodes come out, you can grab them. And, like I've also mentioned, this is all my comedy. This is my comedy stuff that I've been putting out. It's half-hour episodes. And it's for those times where you're like, I want to learn about the world a little bit, but I kind of want to laugh more because this is getting pretty dark right now. And so a lot of laughs. Check it out. Just Comedy. And I will see you Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We had to start early today, but Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. See you then. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
Same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.